To be honest, Jennifer, I get kind of disgusted sometimes too. He's getting weird, you know? Too clingy. Calls all the time, wants to talk about stuff that doesn't matter. Sometimes I look at him and think, my God, I don't want to end up like that when I get old. My name is Frank Morrison. I'm 72 years old. And those were the words my son Michael said about me to his wife on a Sunday afternoon, thinking I wasn't listening. So listen. Hear this story all the way through, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Then tell me, if you were me, what would you have done? And what city are you listening from? I was standing in my kitchen, seasoning chicken for Sunday lunch. My hands were working on autopilot, the way they do when you've been cooking the same recipes for decades. Michael had come to visit with his family, his wife Jennifer, and their 2 kids. It was supposed to be a nice family afternoon. The house was quiet except for the low murmur of conversation from the living room and the occasional giggle from the grandchildren playing. I was humming an old tune Martha used to love, feeling content for the first time in weeks. It's not often anymore that this big house feels alive with family. Then I heard Jennifer's voice carry from the living room. She was talking to Michael, but loud enough that I could catch every word. Honey, don't you think it's time for your father to go to one of those senior living places? He's getting old and this house is way too big for him. Plus, he seems, I don't know, lonely all the time. I stopped humming. My hand froze mid-stir. Michael's voice was lower, but in the silence that followed Jennifer's comment, I could hear him clearly. I don't know, Jen. He's still pretty healthy physically. But what about mentally? Yesterday he told me the same story 3 times. And look at the way he dresses. Those old clothes. That smell of medicine. Honestly, Michael, sometimes I get disgusted by your father. The fork in my hand clattered against the pan. Disgusted. She said disgusted. I felt my chest tighten, but I kept listening. Maybe Michael would defend me. Maybe he'd tell his wife she was being too harsh. Maybe he'd remind her of all the Sunday dinners I'd cooked for them. All the times I'd babysat the kids. All the birthday gifts and Christmas presents. But what came next hit me like a punch to the gut. To be honest, Jennifer, I get kind of disgusted sometimes too. My own son, my firstborn, the boy I used to read bedtime stories to. He's getting weird, you know? Too clingy. Calls all the time, wants to talk about stuff that doesn't matter. Last week he called me 3 times just to tell me about his doctor's appointment. Like, Dad, I don't need to know every detail about your blood pressure medication. Jennifer laughed. A small, mean little laugh. Sometimes I look at him and think, my God, I don't want to end up like that when I get old. All desperate for attention, trying to hold on to people who have moved on with their lives. I leaned against the kitchen counter, my legs suddenly feeling weak. The chicken was burning in the pan, but I couldn't move to turn off the heat. And besides, Michael continued, he keeps guilt-tripping us about not visiting enough. Doesn't understand that we have our own lives, our own schedules. Jennifer, you should see the texts he sends. Miss you kids. House feels empty. Wish we could spend more time together. It's like, Dad, we're adults. We can't be running to Ohio every weekend. Have you talked to Sarah and David about it? Jennifer asked. Oh yeah, we're all on the same page. Sarah thinks he's gotten worse since Mom died. More needy, more pathetic, I guess. David says the same thing. We were actually talking about it last month. Maybe it's time to start looking into those assisted living communities. Pathetic, needy, disgusted. I stood there in my own kitchen, in the house I'd lived in for 30 years, listening to my children discuss me like I was a problem to be solved, like I was some burden they needed to figure out how to handle. The smoke alarm started beeping. The chicken was burning. I turned off the burner and waved away the smoke, my movements mechanical. Through the kitchen window I could see my neighbor Jim working in his garden. Jim, who was my age, who still lived independently, who had children who actually seemed to enjoy his company. What had I done wrong? I thought about the phone calls Michael mentioned. Yes, I called my kids. Was that such a crime? When you spend most of your days alone in a house that used to be full of laughter and conversation, when the silence gets so thick you can barely breathe, is it wrong to want to hear your children's voices? I thought about the doctor's appointment I'd mentioned. I'd been nervous about some test results, wanted someone to talk to about it, someone who cared. But apparently, sharing my concerns with my own son made me clingy. The voices in the living room had moved on to other topics now. Michael was telling Jennifer about some work project. The kids were asking for snacks. Normal family conversation. I scraped the burnt chicken into the trash and started over with new pieces. My hands were shaking slightly, but I kept working. What else was I supposed to do? Storm into the living room and confront them? Make a scene in front of the grandchildren? No. I've never been the type to make scenes. As I seasoned the new chicken, I found myself really thinking about my life for the first time in months. When had I become this person they described? This needy, pathetic old man who disgusted his own family. I used to be different. I used to be someone people respected. But somewhere along the way, without realizing it, I'd become someone my children felt sorry for. Someone they tolerated rather than enjoyed. Someone they discussed in hushed tones, planning how to handle me. The kitchen timer went off, jolting me back to the present. The chicken was ready. I took a deep breath and walked to the living room doorway. "Lunch is ready, everyone." Michael looked up and smiled. The same smile he'd given me since he was 5 years old. "Thanks, Dad. Smells great." Jennifer nodded politely. "You're so sweet to cook for us, Frank." The kids jumped up excitedly. "Grandpa's chicken! Grandpa's chicken!" I watched them all file into the dining room, chattering and laughing, and I felt like I was watching strangers. These people who had just been discussing how disgusted they were by me were now sitting at my table, eating my food, acting like a loving family. During lunch, I was quieter than usual. I listened to their conversations about school, work, vacation plans. I nodded at the right moments, asked the appropriate questions, played the role of the interested grandfather and father. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. That night, after they'd driven back to their lives, I sat alone in my living room and made a decision. I wasn't going to be the pathetic old man they described anymore. I wasn't going to be anyone's burden. And I certainly wasn't going to spend whatever years I had left begging for scraps of attention from children who found me disgusting. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Tomorrow, I would make a call that would change everything. The phone rang at 9 o'clock sharp Monday morning. "Morrison here." "Mr. Morrison, this is Dave Henley from Henley Real Estate. You called yesterday about listing your property?" I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd eaten breakfast alone for the past 5 years. Same coffee mug, same morning routine, same silence. But today felt different. Today, everything was about to change. "That's right, Dave. I want to sell the house." "Well, that's wonderful news, Mr. Morrison. Your property is one of the most desirable in the area. Prime location, excellent condition from what I remember. When were you thinking of putting it on the market?" I looked around the kitchen. Martha's coffee mug was still in the cabinet where I'd left it after she died. I couldn't bring myself to use it or throw it away. The morning light was streaming through the window over the sink, hitting the spot where she used to stand making pancakes on Sunday mornings. "Today," I said. There was a pause. "Today? Well, Mr. Morrison, typically we like to do a proper evaluation first. Maybe stage the house, discuss pricing strategy. Dave, I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. I know what houses are selling for. This place is worth $1.5 million, maybe more. I want it listed today, and I want it sold fast. Are you interested, or should I call someone else?" Another pause. I could practically hear the dollar signs clicking in his head. A quick sale on $1.5 million house meant a nice commission. "Of course, Mr. Morrison. I can be there this afternoon. Say, 2 o'clock? Perfect." After I hung up, I sat in the silence for a while. This house had been my world for 3 decades. Every room held memories. The living room where Michael took his first steps. The backyard where Sarah had her high school graduation party. The basement where David used to practice drums until the neighbors complained. But those were old memories. Recent years had been different. I walked through the rooms slowly, really seeing them for the first time in months. The formal dining room where we used to have big family dinners. Now I ate most of my meals standing at the kitchen counter. The master bedroom that felt cavernous with just me in it. The guest rooms that stayed empty except for those brief obligatory visits from my children. In my study, I sat down at the old oak desk I'd bought when Michael was in high school. This was where I used to pay bills, plan family vacations, help with homework. Now it was mostly just a place where medical bills and prescription bottles accumulated. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a manila folder labeled Important Documents. Inside were the kids' birth certificates, school records, photos from graduations, weddings, grandchildren's births. All the milestones of a family man's life. There was a picture of Michael in his Harvard cap and gown. I remembered that day clearly. He was 22, full of ambition and gratitude. He'd hugged me so tight and whispered, "Thanks for everything, Dad. I couldn't have done this without you." Now that same young man thought I was disgusting. I found Sarah's medical school graduation photo, David's law school diploma that I'd helped him frame, Christmas cards from years past with handwritten notes. "Love you, Dad. Thanks for being the best father. Grateful for everything you've done for us." When had it all changed? When had I gone from being the father they were grateful for to the burden they discussed in whispered conversations? The doorbell rang around 11. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, from across the street. "Frank, I saw that real estate sign going up in your yard. You're not really selling, are you?" Word travels fast in small neighborhoods. Dave must have sent someone to plant the sign already. "I am, Helen." She looked shocked. "But why? This is your home. You and Martha built your whole life here." I looked at this woman who'd been my neighbor for 25 years. Helen had always been kind to me, especially after Martha died. She brought me casseroles sometimes, invited me to her book club, checked on me during bad weather. She was more thoughtful than my own children. "It's time," I said simply. "But where will you go? Are you moving to one of those retirement communities?" "Oh, Frank, please don't tell me the kids are making you." "The kids don't know yet," I said. "And this is my decision, Helen. Nobody's making me do anything." She studied my face for a moment. Helen was a smart woman. She'd raised 4 children of her own, all of whom still visited her regularly. I think she understood more than she was saying. "Well," she said finally, "if you need anything during this transition, you know where to find me." After she left, I walked back into the house and really looked at it with fresh eyes. This wasn't just a house I was selling. It was the monument to a life philosophy that had failed me. For 40 years, I'd believed that providing for your family meant everything. Work hard, save money, buy the biggest house you can afford, send your kids to the best schools, give them every advantage. That was success. That was being a good father. I'd succeeded by every measure society uses. My children were all college-educated professionals making good livings. They had nice homes, healthy families, bright futures. By all accounts, I should have been proud. But somewhere in the pursuit of giving them everything, I'd forgotten to make sure they actually liked me. Or maybe I'd never learned how. My own father had been a distant man. He worked, he provided, he died when I was 35. I'd barely known him as a person. I'd promised myself I'd be different with my kids. But when I really thought about it, had I been? I'd been present for the big moments, graduations, weddings, births. But the day-to-day relationship building? The casual conversations? The shared interests? The friendship part of being a father? I'd always been too busy for that. Too busy building the life I thought they wanted. The phone rang again. This time it was Michael. "Hey, Dad. Just wanted to thank you again for yesterday. Jennifer said the kids had a great time." I almost laughed at the irony. "Glad to hear it, son. Listen, I've been thinking about what Jennifer said yesterday about the house being too big for you. Maybe we should start looking into some options. There are some really nice senior communities now, Dad. Very upscale. You might actually enjoy having people around your own age." My own age? People my own age who wouldn't disgust him. "I appreciate the concern, Michael, but I'm handling it." "Oh, okay. Well, if you want to talk about it, you know I'm here for you. Here for me. The son who found me disgusting was here for me. I know you are, son. I'll talk to you soon." After I hung up, I realized something had crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about selling a house. This was about reclaiming my dignity. For 5 years since Martha died, I'd been shrinking, getting smaller, needier, more desperate for my children's attention, calling them too often, sharing too much, trying too hard to stay relevant in their lives. But that wasn't who I used to be. I used to be Frank Morrison, a man people respected, a man who built something from nothing, who made tough decisions, who didn't beg anyone for anything. It was time to remember who that man was. Dave Henley arrived at exactly 2 o'clock with a briefcase and a confident smile. "Mr. Morrison, beautiful property. Let's get this listed and sold." As we walked through the house discussing square footage and market comparisons, I felt lighter than I had in years. By 5 o'clock, my house was officially on the market. By 8 o'clock, we had our first showing scheduled. And by the time I went to bed that night, I'd made 3 more phone calls that were going to change everything. The first call I made that Monday night was to my lawyer, Tom Bradley. We'd gone to high school together back in the day, and he'd handled all my business affairs for 20 years. "Frank, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "Tom, I need you to draft a new will, and I need it done fast." There was a pause. "Frank, we just updated your will 2 years ago after Martha passed. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. But I want some changes made." I could hear him shuffling papers. "Okay, what kind of changes are we talking about?" "I want to remove my children as beneficiaries." The line went dead quiet for a long moment. "Frank, that's a pretty drastic step. Can I ask what's brought this on?" "Let's just say I've had a revelation about family loyalty. Tom had known me long enough to understand when I was serious." "All right. Where do you want the estate to go instead?" I'd been thinking about this all afternoon. "Split it 3 ways. 1/3 to St. Joseph's Children's Hospital, 1/3 to the Salvation Army, and 1/3 to establish a scholarship fund for kids who can't afford college." "Frank, we're talking about a substantial estate here. The house alone, your investments, the business assets. This is probably close to $3 million total. I know exactly what it's worth, Tom. And you want to leave nothing to your children? Not even a small bequest?" I thought about that for a moment. "Actually, yes. Leave them each $1. I want it clear this wasn't an oversight." Another long pause. "Frank, I have to ask, are you feeling well? This is a complete 180 from everything you've told me about your family over the years." Tom was a good friend, but he didn't need to know the details. "I'm feeling better than I have in years." "Can you have the papers ready by Thursday?" "I can have them ready by Wednesday if you need them that fast." "Wednesday's perfect." The second call was to my financial advisor, Patricia Wells. "Mr. Morrison, working late tonight?" "Patricia, I need you to liquidate some assets. The mutual funds, the CDs, maybe half the stock portfolio. That's a significant amount of money, Mr. Morrison. Can I ask what this is for? Are you looking at a major purchase?" "You could say that. I'm purchasing my freedom." She laughed nervously. "I'm not sure I follow. How quickly can you get me access to, say, $500,000 in cash?" "Cash? Mr. Morrison, that's not typically how we handle large transactions. There are tax implications, reporting requirements. Patricia, I've been your client for 15 years. I've never made a frivolous financial decision. I need $500,000 accessible within the week. Can you make that happen? Or do I need to find someone who can?" "Of course, Mr. Morrison. I can have a cashier's check ready by Thursday." "Perfect." The third call was the hardest one to make. I dialed Sarah's number in Los Angeles. "Hi, Dad. This is a nice surprise. How are you doing?" Sarah was my middle child, my only daughter. She'd always been the gentlest of the 3, the one who seemed to actually enjoy our conversations. If any of them truly cared about me, it would be Sarah. "I'm doing well, sweetheart. Listen, I wanted to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." "Of course, Dad. What is it? Do you think I've become a burden to you kids?" There was a pause that told me everything I needed to know. "Dad, where is this coming from? You're not a burden." "Sarah," I said, "be honest." Another pause, longer this time. "Dad, it's not that you're a burden exactly. It's just, well, since Mom died, you've been different. More dependent, I guess." "Dependent?" There was that word. Dependent how? Well, the phone calls every few days. The way you get upset if we don't visit often enough. Dad, I love you. But sometimes it feels like you're trying to make us feel guilty for having our own lives. At least she was being honest. More honest than Michael had been to my face. And you've discussed this with your brothers? Another pause. We've talked about it. Yes. Dad, we're worried about you. Maybe it would be good for you to be around people your own age. People who understand what you're going through. People my own age. The same suggestion Michael had made, just delivered more gently. I see. Well, I appreciate your honesty, sweetheart. Dad, please don't be upset. We love you. We just think... I'm not upset, Sarah. Actually, you've helped me make an important decision. What decision? You'll find out soon enough. Give my love to the family. After I hung up, I sat in my study for a long time, 3 for 3. All my children saw me the same way, as a needy old man who'd overstayed his welcome in their lives. But you know what? They were right about one thing. I had become dependent. Dependent on their approval, their attention, their validation. Somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten how to be content with my own company. When Martha was alive, I'd never felt lonely. We had our routines, our conversations, our shared life. After she died, instead of learning to be alone, I'd tried to fill that void with my children. And they'd resented me for it. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 40 years, I'd worked myself to the bone to provide for them. Now they were successful adults with their own families, and instead of being grateful for the foundation I'd given them, they saw me as a burden. But maybe that was partly my fault too. Maybe I'd raised them to be takers instead of givers. Maybe I'd been so focused on providing material things that I'd never taught them about loyalty, respect, or taking care of family. I walked upstairs to the master bedroom and opened Martha's jewelry box. Inside was the ring I'd given her for our 25th anniversary. A simple diamond band, nothing flashy, but she'd loved it. Next to it was a letter I'd written her on our 40th anniversary, but never given her, because I was too embarrassed. It was full of all the things I'd been too busy to say while she was alive. Martha, I said out loud to the empty room, I think I've been doing this all wrong. I could almost hear her voice in response. Martha had always been the wise one in our marriage. She'd warned me a few times over the years that I was working too much, missing too many family moments. But I'd thought I was being responsible. I'd thought providing was the same as loving. The next morning I was up early. I had a lot to do. First, I drove to the bank and arranged for the cashier's check Patricia had promised. $500,000. More money than my father had seen in his entire lifetime. Money I'd earned through decades of hard work and careful saving. Money I was about to use to disappear. Next, I stopped by the travel agency downtown. Remember those? Before everything went online, you actually talked to a human being about your vacation plans. I want to book a trip, I told the young woman behind the desk. Wonderful. Where are you thinking of going? Somewhere warm, somewhere far away, somewhere I can start over. She pulled out some brochures. Are you interested in a cruise? A resort vacation? How long are you planning to be away? I thought about that question. How long was I planning to be away? Indefinitely, I said. By Wednesday afternoon, I was signing the new will in Tom's office. By Thursday, Patricia had the cashier's check ready. And by Friday morning, I had a one-way ticket to Costa Rica in my pocket. The house had 3 showings that week. Dave was confident we'd have an offer by the weekend. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Friday evening, I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote 3 letters. 1 to each of my children. They were all identical. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Don't worry, I'm not sick. I'm not in danger. And this isn't about anything dramatic. I've simply decided to live the rest of my life on my own terms. You'll find out soon enough what changes I've made. Don't try to find me. Don't call the police. This is my choice, and it's the first truly selfish thing I've done in 50 years. It feels wonderful. Dad. I sealed the letters and left them on the counter. On Saturday morning, Dave called with news that would make everything perfect. Frank, we've got a cash offer. Full asking price. They want to close next week. Accepted, I said. Don't you want to think about it? Maybe counter for a little more? Accept it, Dave. I want this done fast. As I hung up the phone, I realized I was smiling for the first time in months. My children thought I was pathetic. They found me disgusting. They were about to find out what their pathetic old father was really capable of. The closing was set for Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. By Monday night, I'd packed everything I was taking with me into 2 suitcases. 47 years of marriage, 30 years in this house, and it all fit into 2 bags. Funny how little you actually need when you really think about it. I kept Martha's wedding ring and the letter I'd never given her. A few photos of us from our early years, before the kids, when we were still young and thought we had all the time in the world. Some important documents, a couple changes of clothes. That was it. Everything else, the furniture, the dishes, the accumulated stuff of a lifetime, I was leaving behind. The new owners could deal with it, donate it, throw it away. I didn't care anymore. Tuesday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. Old habits die hard. For 40 years, I'd been an early riser, always the first one up, always the one who got things moving. Today would be no different. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table for the last time, watching the sun come up through the window Martha used to love. She always said this kitchen had the best morning light in the house. At 7 o'clock, my phone started ringing. It was Michael. Morning, Dad. I was thinking about our conversation the other day, about the house being too big and everything. Jennifer found some information about this really nice assisted living place about an hour from us. They have golf, a pool, organized activities. I let him talk for a few minutes, describing this place where I could spend my final years playing bingo and doing chair exercises with other people my children found disgusting. That sounds very nice, Michael. Really? You'd be interested in taking a look? I'll definitely keep it in mind. Great. I can drive down this weekend and we can go check it out together. Dad, I really think you'd be happier around people your own age. You'd make friends, have things to do. Michael, can I ask you something? Sure, Dad. In all these conversations about what would make me happier, have you ever wondered if maybe I'd be happier just having my children actually want to spend time with me? There was a pause. Dad, of course we want to spend time with you. It's just, we're busy, you know. We have jobs, kids, responsibilities. I understand, son. I really do. So you'll think about the assisted living place? I'll give it all the consideration it deserves. After I hung up, I couldn't help but laugh. Here was my son, calling to convince me to move into an old folks' home while I was sitting here 4 hours away from closing on the sale of my house and disappearing to another country. If only he knew. At 8:30, Helen Patterson knocked on the door. Frank, I brought you some banana bread. Thought you might like something homemade before everything changes. Helen was the only person I was going to miss from this place. She'd been a good neighbor, a real friend. More of a friend than my own children when I really thought about it. Helen, I want you to have something. I went to the mantel and picked up a framed photo of Martha and me from our honeymoon. We were standing on a beach in Florida, young and tanned and laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. Frank, I can't take this. This is your memory. I have plenty of memories up here, I said, tapping my temple. And I want someone who actually knew Martha to have this. Someone who will remember her the way she really was. Helen's eyes filled with tears. Frank, where are you going? Really? Somewhere warm. Somewhere nobody knows me as anyone's father or anyone's burden. Somewhere I can just be Frank Morrison again. Will you stay in touch? Let me know you're okay? I thought about that. Maybe someday, Helen, when I figure out who I'm supposed to be now. She hugged me then, a real hug, the kind I hadn't gotten from my own family in years. At 9:15, I loaded my suitcases into the car. I took one last walk through the house, not feeling sentimental, just final. This chapter of my life was ending, and I was ready to start writing a new one. The closing went smoothly. The buyers were a young couple with a baby on the way. They reminded me of Martha and me when we'd bought this place, full of hope and plans and dreams about the life they were going to build. Mr. Morrison, the young husband said as we were signing papers, thank you for taking such good care of this house. We can tell it was loved. It was loved. For a long time, it was very loved. Take care of it, I told them. Make it full of laughter again. By 11:30, I was walking out of the lawyer's office with a check for $1.4 million after fees and taxes. Combined with my other liquid assets, I was looking at close to $2 million in cash. Not bad for a kid who grew up poor in Ohio. My flight to San Jose wasn't until 6 p.m., so I had some time to kill. I drove around town for a while, past the old high school where I'd met Martha at a basketball game in 1973, past the church where we'd gotten married, past the hospital where all 3 kids were born. It was like taking a tour of someone else's life. Around 2 o'clock, I stopped at Mel's Diner, the same place I'd been eating lunch for 20 years. Mel himself was still there, now in his 70s but still flipping burgers. "Frank, haven't seen you in a while. How you been holding up?" "Better than ever, Mel. Actually, I'm moving away today." "No kidding. Where to?" "Costa Rica." Mel whistled. "Living the dream, huh? Good for you, Frank. You deserve it after all you've been through." Mel knew about Martha's death, knew I'd been struggling, but he didn't know about the kids. He probably assumed they were supportive, caring children helping their father through his grief. If only he knew the truth. At 4 o'clock, I drove to the airport and returned my rental car. I'd sold my regular car along with everything else. No need for it where I was going. As I sat in the departure lounge, I turned on my phone one last time to check messages. There were 3 missed calls from Michael, 2 from Sarah, and 1 from David. Word was apparently getting out that something was happening. I listened to Michael's voicemail. "Dad, I just drove by the house and there's a sold sign in the yard. What's going on? Call me back immediately." Sarah's message was more panicked. "Dad, Michael called me about the house. Are you okay? Where are you? Please call me back." David's was typically blunt. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Call me." I smiled and turned off the phone. Let them wonder for a while. Let them feel what it was like to be ignored, to have their calls go unreturned. At 5:30, they started boarding my flight. As I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, I felt lighter than I had in years. "Traveling alone today, Mr. Morrison?" she asked, looking at my passport. "Yes," I said, and I couldn't be happier about it. As the plane taxied down the runway, I looked out the window at the lights of the city where I'd spent most of my adult life, where I'd built a business, raised a family, buried my wife, where I'd slowly transformed from a confident man into someone even his own children found pathetic. But that man was gone now. The Frank Morrison who begged for attention, who accepted scraps of affection, who let his children's opinions define his worth, he was staying behind in Ohio. The man on this plane was someone different, someone who'd just made the biggest decision of his life without asking anyone's permission or approval. Someone who was about to show his children exactly what their disgusting father was capable of. As we lifted off into the clouds, I opened the book I'd brought for the flight, a guide to starting over in Costa Rica. Chapter 1 was titled, Embracing Your New Life. Perfect. That's exactly what I was planning to do. The old Frank Morrison had spent 50 years living for other people. The new Frank Morrison was going to live for himself. And if my children wanted to find out what had happened to their pathetic old father, they were going to have to work a lot harder than they'd worked at being decent human beings. The plane banked west, carrying me toward my new life, and I didn't look back once. I landed in San Jose at 11 p.m. local time. The warm air hit me as soon as I stepped off the plane, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe deeply. The taxi driver who picked me up spoke broken English, but we managed to communicate well enough. I'd booked a hotel in the city center for my first few nights while I figured out my next move. "First time in Costa Rica, senor?" he asked as we drove through the streets. "First time doing a lot of things," I told him. The hotel was modest, but clean. Nothing fancy. Nothing that screamed, rich American tourist. I wanted to blend in, to be nobody special. Just another guy starting over in a new place. As I unpacked my 2 suitcases in the small room, I realized something remarkable had happened. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't thinking about what time it was back home. I wasn't calculating whether it was too late to call the kids, or wondering if I should send a text to let someone know I was okay. Nobody was expecting to hear from me. Nobody was waiting for my call. And instead of feeling lonely, I felt free. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I woke up at sunrise, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I grabbed a cup of coffee from the hotel lobby and sat on a bench in the small plaza across the street, watching the city come alive. An old man was feeding pigeons near the fountain. A woman was setting up a fruit stand on the corner. Kids were walking to school, chattering in Spanish. Normal life happening all around me, and I was part of it now. Not Frank Morrison, the failed father. Not Frank Morrison, the burden. Just Frank, a guy sitting on a bench drinking coffee. My phone had been off since I left Ohio. Around noon, curiosity got the better of me, and I turned it on to see what I'd missed. 47 missed calls, 31 voicemails, dozens of text messages. I scrolled through them slowly, like reading someone else's mail. Michael. Dad, where are you? Call me immediately. Sarah. Dad, please just let us know you're safe. We're worried sick. David. This is insane, Dad. Whatever you're going through, we can work it out. Just call us back. More of the same, getting increasingly frantic as the hours passed. I noticed they'd started calling each other too. There were group text messages between the three of them, trying to coordinate their search for their missing father. Then I found the voicemail that made me laugh out loud. It was from Michael, left around 10 p.m. the night before. Dad, I drove to your house and there are strangers living there. They said they bought it from you last week. What the hell is going on? And there's a letter here with my name on it. I'm going to read it now. Dad, please, just call me back. I don't understand what's happening. So they'd found the letters. Good. I kept scrolling and found another voicemail from Sarah, left this morning. Dad, I read your letter. I don't understand. If this is about what we talked about last week, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. But disappearing like this isn't the answer. Please, just come home and we'll work it out. Hurt my feelings. As if this was about hurt feelings. David's message was more direct. Dad, this is ridiculous. You're 72 years old. You can't just disappear and start over like some teenager. Be an adult and come home. We need to talk. Be an adult. That was rich, coming from the son who'd been discussing putting me in a nursing home behind my back. I turned the phone off again and put it in my pocket. Let them worry for a while longer. I spent the rest of the week exploring San Jose, getting my bearings, learning basic Spanish phrases, figuring out how things worked in this new world. I opened a local bank account and transferred some money. I bought new clothes that actually fit properly instead of the old, comfortable things I'd been wearing that apparently made my children ashamed of me. Every few days, I'd turn on my phone just to check the messages. The tone was shifting. The panic was giving way to anger. Michael. Dad, this is beyond selfish. Do you have any idea what you're putting us through? Jennifer's worried sick. The kids keep asking where Grandpa is. Sarah. Dad, I talked to Tom Bradley. We know about the will. How could you do this to us, after everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me. Like what? Visiting twice a year? Taking my phone calls when they weren't too busy? Discussing how disgusting I was behind my back? David's message was the most telling. Dad, we hired a private investigator. We're going to find you, and when we do, we're going to have you declared incompetent. This behavior isn't normal for someone your age. There it was. The real David coming out. Not worried about my safety or happiness, worried about the money, worried that their inheritance had just walked away. I was sitting in a small cafe near my hotel when I read that message, and I started laughing so hard the other customers stared at me. Incompetent? I'd just executed the most competent plan of my entire life. I'd sold a house, liquidated assets, changed my will, and moved to another country, all without anyone catching on until it was too late. At 72 years old, I'd outsmarted 3 college-educated professionals who thought their old man was losing his mind. If that was incompetence, I'd take it. 2 weeks into my new life, I was sitting on the beach in Manuel Antonio, about 3 hours from San Jose. I'd rented a small house overlooking the ocean. Nothing fancy, but perfect for what I needed. I was reading a book, drinking a beer, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a text message. This time it wasn't from one of my children. It was from Helen Patterson. Frank, I don't know where you are, but I hope you're happy. The kids have been by the house looking for clues about where you went. They seem different. Humbled, maybe. I didn't tell them anything, but I wanted you to know they're really searching for you. Take care of yourself. Good old Helen. The only person from my old life who seemed to understand that this wasn't a cry for help or a mental breakdown. This was a choice. I typed back, I'm watching the most beautiful sunset I've seen in years. Thank you for being a true friend. As I hit send, I realized something had happened over these 2 weeks. I'd stopped thinking about my children constantly. I'd stopped measuring every experience against whether they would approve or be impressed. I was just living. Day by day, moment by moment, decision by decision. For the first time in my adult life, I was living entirely for myself. And you know what? It felt incredible. Tomorrow, I was going to look at a piece of land for sale up in the mountains. Maybe I'd buy it, build a small house, start a garden. Maybe I'd learn to speak Spanish fluently, make some local friends, volunteer at a school. Maybe I'd never contact my children again. Or maybe someday, when they'd learned some humility, when they'd figured out what they'd lost, I'd consider letting them back into my life. But it would be on my terms this time. The old Frank Morrison had spent 50 years earning their love and respect, only to discover he'd never really had either. The new Frank Morrison wasn't going to beg anyone for anything ever again. 3 months into my new life, I was a different man. I'd bought that piece of land in the mountains, 5 acres overlooking a valley that stretched for miles. Every morning I woke up to the sound of howler monkeys and tropical birds instead of traffic and alarm clocks. I was building a small house with the help of some local workers who'd become friends despite our language barrier. My Spanish was getting better every day. I'd joined a weekly poker game with some American expats and a few locals. I was learning to cook traditional Costa Rican food. I'd even started dating a woman named Carmen who ran a small restaurant in town. She was 65, a widow, and she had no idea who I used to be back in Ohio. To her, I was just Frank, the gringo who made her laugh and helped her fix things around the restaurant. For the first time since Martha died, I felt alive again. I'd been turning on my phone once a week, just to see if anything important had happened back home. The messages from my children had slowed down considerably. Either they were giving up, or their private investigator wasn't very good at his job. But this particular Thursday morning, there was a message that was different from all the others. It was from Sarah, and her voice sounded broken. Dad, it's Sarah. I need to tell you something. Michael's been fired from his job. The company found out he was embezzling money to cover some gambling debts. Dad, he's in serious trouble. They might press charges. Jennifer left him and took the kids. He's lost everything, Dad. And he keeps saying he needs to talk to you, that he needs to apologize for things he said. I don't know where you are, but if you get this, Michael needs his father right now. I sat on my porch, listening to that message 3 times, feeling absolutely nothing. Michael was in trouble. The golden boy who'd graduated from Harvard, who made $300,000 a year, who thought his father was disgusting, was in trouble. And what was I supposed to do about it? There was another message from David. Dad, forget everything I said before about having you declared incompetent. That was wrong of me. Look, we need you to come home. Sarah told you about Michael, but there's more. My law practice is in trouble too. I made some bad investments, took out loans against the business. I might lose everything. And Sarah's hospital is downsizing, and she's one of the doctors they're letting go. Dad, I know we screwed up. I know we treated you badly, but we're family. We need to stick together. Family. Now they wanted to talk about family. I put the phone down and walked to the edge of my property, looking out over the valley. A toucan landed in the tree next to me, its bright colors almost artificial against the green backdrop. In the distance, I could see Carmen's restaurant, where I'd be having lunch later with friends who actually enjoyed my company. This was my life now. Peaceful, simple, honest. But my children, the children I'd sacrificed everything for, were falling apart. The old Frank Morrison would have booked the next flight home, would have rushed to fix their problems, bail them out, save them from their own mistakes. would have emptied his bank accounts and sold his soul to make sure his babies were okay. But the old Frank Morrison was gone. I called Carmen that afternoon. "Frank, you look troubled. What's wrong?" Carmen was direct in the way that people who've lived real lives tend to be. No games, no pretense. "I got some news from back home. My children are having problems." "What kind of problems?" "Financial problems, career problems, life problems." She poured us both a glass of wine. "And they want your help?" "They want me to come home." Carmen studied my face. "But you don't want to go?" It wasn't a question. Carmen understood people in a way my children never had. For 50 years I lived my life for them. I worked myself to death, gave them everything I had, sacrificed my own happiness to make sure they had every advantage. And when I got old, when I needed them, they found me disgusting. Carmen nodded. "So you left?" "So I left. And now they're in trouble, and they remember they have a father." "Exactly." Carmen was quiet for a while, watching the sunset. "Frank, can I tell you about my son?" I'd never heard Carmen talk about her family before. "Miguel was my only child. I worked 3 jobs to put him through university. His father left when Miguel was 5, so it was just me and him. I gave him everything: money, love, support. When he graduated, he got a good job in San Jose, married a nice girl, had children." She paused, sipping her wine. "And then he became successful. Too successful to visit his old mother very often. Too busy to call. I would see my grandchildren maybe twice a year, at Christmas and birthdays. Miguel would send money sometimes, but he wouldn't come himself. What happened? I got sick, cancer. I needed surgery, chemotherapy. You know what Miguel did?" I waited. "He sent money for the medical bills, but he never came to see me, not once during 8 months of treatment. He was too busy with his important life in the city." "Carmen, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. I survived. I beat the cancer." "And you know what I learned?" "What?" "I learned that love isn't something you can buy with sacrifice. I sacrificed everything for Miguel, just like you did for your children. But I never taught him to love me back. I only taught him to take." She turned to face me directly. "Your children are calling now because they need something. Not because they love you, but because they need you. And if you go back, if you save them from their problems, what do you think will happen?" I already knew the answer. "They'll go back to their lives, and I'll go back to being the burden they discuss in whispered conversations." "Exactly. So the question is, what do you want, Frank? Do you want to be needed, or do you want to be respected?" I thought about that question for a long time. In my old life, I'd confused being needed with being loved. I'd thought that if I was indispensable, I'd be valued. But being needed by people who don't actually like you isn't love. It's just usefulness. "I want to be respected," I said finally. "Then you know what you have to do." That night I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to all 3 of my children, but just to one. To Sarah, because she'd been the most honest with me, and because her message had sounded genuinely remorseful rather than just desperate. "Sarah," I wrote, "I received your message about Michael, and David's message about your family's financial troubles. I'm sorry you're all going through difficult times, but I want you to understand something. I didn't leave because I was angry or hurt. I left because I realized I'd spent 50 years being someone I didn't respect. A man who begged for love from people who didn't want to give it. I've found peace now, Sarah. I found a life where I'm valued for who I am, not for what I can provide. If you and your brothers want a relationship with me someday, it will have to be built on respect, not need. Until then, I wish you well. Dad." I mailed the letter the next morning. A week later, Sarah called. Her voice was different, quieter, more thoughtful. "Dad, I got your letter, and I think I understand. We did treat you badly. We took you for granted. We made you feel like a burden instead of our father." "Yes, you did. Can you ever forgive us?" I thought about that question. Forgiveness was one thing. Trust was another. "Sarah, forgiveness isn't the issue. The issue is whether you've learned anything from this experience." "We have, Dad. We really have." "Then prove it. Don't ask me to come home and fix your problems. Figure them out yourselves." Show me you can be adults who don't need daddy to save them every time life gets hard. There was a long pause. And if we do that, if we get our lives together on our own, then maybe we can talk about rebuilding our relationship. But it will be a relationship between equals, Sarah, not between a provider and takers. I understand, Dad. I really do. For the first time in our conversation, she sounded like the daughter I'd raised to be strong and independent, instead of the entitled adult who'd expected me to always be available to solve her problems. Maybe there was hope for us after all, but it would have to be earned. 6 months passed before I heard from any of them again. In that time, I'd finished building my house, a simple 2-bedroom place with a wraparound porch and windows that caught the morning light just right. I'd planted a garden that was already producing tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. Carmen and I had become more serious, and I was happier than I'd been since the early days with Martha. I'd also turned off my phone permanently. If my children wanted to reach me, they'd have to work harder than sending a text message. Then, on a Tuesday morning in December, I found a letter in my mailbox. Real mail, with my new address written in Sarah's handwriting. Someone had done their homework to find me. I sat on my porch with my coffee and opened it. "Dad," it began, "it's taken us 6 months to find you, and it's taken me 6 months to figure out what to say. You were right about everything. We did treat you terribly. We did take you for granted, and we did think of you as a burden instead of our father. I'm ashamed of that now, but I want you to know what's happened since you left, because I think you'd be proud of us. Finally. Michael hit rock bottom after you left. Jennifer took the kids and filed for divorce. He lost his job, his house, everything. But something amazing happened. He stopped gambling. He got help. Real help. He's been going to Gamblers Anonymous for 4 months now, and he got a job selling cars again, just like you used to do. He says it reminds him of where he came from, of the values you tried to teach him. He's living in a small apartment, paying child support, trying to earn back his children's trust one day at a time. He's become a different person, Dad. Humble, grateful, real. David lost his law practice, just like he told you he might. But instead of falling apart, he did something I never expected. He became a public defender. He's making a fraction of what he used to make, but he tells me he's never been happier with his work. He's helping people who can't afford fancy lawyers, people like the families we grew up around. He says it reminds him of why he wanted to be a lawyer in the first place, before he got caught up in making money. And me? I lost my job at the hospital, but I've started volunteering at a free clinic in the poorest part of LA. I'm using my medical training to help people who remind me a lot of your patients back when you had your clinic. Yes, Dad, I know about the clinic. I know you ran a free medical clinic for 10 years in the 80s and never told us about it. Helen Patterson told me. She told me a lot of things about you that we never knew. The point is, we're all different now. We're all working harder, earning less, and somehow, we're better people. The people you tried to raise us to be before we got spoiled by success and money. But the most important thing I want to tell you is this. We're not writing to ask for anything. We're not in crisis anymore. We've learned to solve our own problems. We've learned to be adults. We just wanted you to know that your son and daughter still exist. The real ones. The ones you raised before they got lost in their own selfishness. If you ever want to meet those people, we'd be honored to know you again. But only if you want to. Only on your terms. We love you, Dad. We always did. We just forgot how to show it. Your daughter, Sarah. P.S. Michael wants you to know he's been sober for 6 months, and every day he doesn't gamble. He thinks about the work ethic you showed him. David wants you to know that he finally understands what you meant when you used to say that a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account. And I want you to know that I think about you every time I hold a patient's hand, because I finally understand that caring for people was always what mattered most to you. I read that letter 3 times, sitting on my porch as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Carmen found me there an hour later, still holding the letter. "Good news or bad news?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet." She sat down next to me and waited. Carmen was good at waiting. "It's from my daughter. She says they've all changed, that they've learned to solve their own problems." "And do you believe her?" That was the question, wasn't it? After 50 years of being disappointed by my children, after months of peace without them, Was I willing to risk letting them back into my life? I don't know, I said honestly. What does your gut tell you? I thought about that. My gut told me that people don't usually change unless they have to. And my children had been forced to change by circumstances. Michael by losing everything. David by failing at the career he'd built on greed. Sarah by losing the prestigious job that had made her feel superior to the people she'd grown up around. But forced change could be real change if it stuck. My gut tells me they might be telling the truth, but my head tells me to be careful. Carmen nodded. Smart man. So what will you do? I looked out over the valley I'd come to love, at the life I'd built from nothing at 72 years old. This was my sanctuary, my peace, my proof that I could be happy without begging anyone for love or attention. But it was also lonely sometimes, not the desperate, needy loneliness I'd felt in Ohio, but the natural loneliness of a man who'd cut himself off from his children. I think, I said slowly, I'm going to test them. How? I'm going to invite one of them to visit. Not all three. That would be too overwhelming, too much like the old family dynamics. Just one. Sarah, probably, since she wrote the letter. And if she comes? If she comes, I'll see if this new person she claims to be is real. If she treats me with respect. If she's interested in me as a person, not just as a father who can solve problems. If she can accept that I've built a life here that doesn't revolve around being needed by my children. Carmen smiled. And if she passes the test, then maybe we can slowly rebuild something. Something different from what we had before. Something better. That afternoon, I walked to town and bought an international calling card. I hadn't spoken to any of my children in months, and my heart was beating faster than I wanted to admit as I dialed Sarah's number. Hello? Sarah, it's your father. There was a long pause, and then I heard her start to cry. Dad. Oh my God, Dad. Thank you for calling. Thank you so much. I got your letter. Did you believe it? I want to. But words are easy, Sarah. Anyone can write a nice letter when they want something. We don't want anything, Dad. I swear to you, we don't want anything except a chance to know you again. Then prove it. Come visit me. Another pause. You want me to come to Costa Rica? I want you to come see the life I've built here. I want you to meet the people who matter to me now. I want to see if you can respect the man I've become, or if you're still looking for the father who existed only to serve your needs. Dad, I'll come whenever you want me to. Just tell me when. Next month, February, you can stay for a week. But Sarah, understand this. You'll be a guest in my life, not the center of it. I have friends here, commitments, a relationship. You'll have to fit into my world, not the other way around. I understand. And Dad? Yes? I'm proud of you. For leaving, for building a new life, for finding happiness. I'm proud of you for choosing yourself for once. Those words hit me harder than I expected. In all the years I'd sacrificed for my children, none of them had ever said they were proud of me for taking care of myself. We'll see, Sarah. We'll see if you still feel that way after you get here. But as I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Sarah arrived on a Thursday morning in February. I picked her up at the airport in my beat-up Toyota pickup truck, a far cry from the luxury cars I used to drive back in Ohio. When she walked out of customs, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect hair. She looked simpler, more real. She was wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, carrying one small backpack. The Sarah I remembered would have brought 3 suitcases for a week-long trip. Dad. She stopped in front of me, and for a moment I thought she might cry. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. Not the obligatory quick hug I was used to, but a real one. The kind that says, I missed you, instead of, this is what we're supposed to do. You look good, Dad. Really good. I did look good. The Costa Rican sun had tanned my skin. The physical work of building my house had kept me strong, and the peace I'd found had taken years off my face. I felt better at 73 than I had at 70. So do you, I told her. And I meant it. She looked tired, but there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Humility, maybe. Or just reality. On the drive to my house, She didn't ask about money or inheritance or when I was coming home. She asked about the country, about the people, about what I'd been doing with my time. She seemed genuinely interested in my life, not just in how it affected her. "Dad, this is beautiful," she said when we pulled up to my house. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was mine. Every board, every nail, every detail had been chosen by me, for me. "I built most of it myself," I said. "Well, with help from some local guys who became friends." She looked impressed. "I didn't know you could build a house." I didn't either. Turns out when you stop worrying about what other people think, you can learn a lot of new things. I showed her around the property, the garden where I grew my own vegetables, the workshop where I'd learned to make furniture, the porch where I sat every morning watching the sun rise over the valley. "It's perfect, Dad. It's so... you." That surprised me. "How do you mean?" "I don't know. I guess I'd forgotten that you were a person outside of being our father. This place feels like Frank Morrison, not like someone trying to impress his kids or live up to what other people expect." We spent the afternoon sitting on the porch talking. Really talking, for the first time in years. She told me about her work at the free clinic, about how different it was from the high-end hospital where she'd worked before. "The patients can't pay me, but they bake me cookies and bring me vegetables from their gardens. They remember my birthday. They ask about my life. It's more rewarding than any job I've ever had." "Sounds familiar," I said. "Dad, Helen told me about your clinic, the one you ran in the 80s. Why didn't you ever tell us about it?" I thought about that. "Because you kids were young and I didn't want you to worry about money. I wanted you to feel secure." "But you were helping people." "Yeah, I was. Those were good years. Some of my best years, actually." "Why did you stop?" "Because the business got bigger, and I thought I needed to focus on making more money for the family. I thought being a good provider was more important than being a good person." Sarah was quiet for a while. "We made you think that, didn't we? We made you think your only value was in what you could give us." I could have agreed with her, could have made her feel guilty. But what would be the point? "I let myself think that," I said. I forgot who I was. That evening, I took her to Carmen's restaurant. I was nervous about this part. How would Sarah react to seeing her father with another woman? Would she be jealous, protective of her mother's memory? But Sarah surprised me again. She hugged Carmen warmly and thanked her in broken Spanish for taking care of her father. She asked Carmen about her life, her restaurant, her family. She treated her like a person, not like an obstacle. Over dinner, I watched Sarah interact with my new friends, the guys I played poker with, the neighbors who'd helped me build my house, the local families who'd welcomed me into their community. She was respectful, interested, genuine. This wasn't the entitled doctor who'd been embarrassed by her father's neediness. This was a woman who understood what it meant to be part of a community. Later that night, we sat on my porch under the stars. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Are you happy? Really happy?" I thought about that question. "Yes, Sarah, I really am." "Good. That's all I wanted to know. What about you? Are you happy?" She considered this. "I'm happier than I've been in years. Poorer, but happier. I guess I finally understand what you used to tell us about money not buying happiness." I used to say that. All the time. We just weren't listening. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the jungle. "Dad, I have something to tell you. Michael and David don't know I'm here." "What do you mean?" I mean, I didn't tell them I was coming. This isn't about them trying to get back in your good graces. This is just about me wanting to see my father again. That meant more to me than she could know. This wasn't a coordinated effort to manipulate me back into their lives. This was just a daughter missing her dad. "Are you going to tell them about this visit?" "Only if you want me to." I looked at this woman sitting next to me, my daughter, but also just Sarah, a person I was getting to know for the first time as an adult. "Let's see how the week goes," I said. But already, I had a feeling it was going to go just fine. On Sarah's last day, we were sitting on the beach watching the sunset when she said something that changed everything. "Dad, I need to apologize for something specific. I'd been waiting for this conversation all week." Sarah had been perfect, respectful, interested, genuine. But I knew there were things that needed to be said. What is it? That Sunday when we were at your house. I knew you heard us talking. I felt my chest tighten. What do you mean? I saw you in the kitchen doorway when Michael was saying those awful things. I saw your face when he said he was disgusted by you. And I didn't say anything. I didn't defend you. I let him say those things, and then I joined in. She was crying now. Really crying. I've been carrying that guilt for a year, Dad. I watched my father's heart break in real time, and I did nothing to stop it. I was more worried about agreeing with my brothers than protecting the man who'd given me everything. I sat there for a moment, remembering that day, the way the fork had clattered in my hand, the way my world had shifted on its axis. Why didn't you defend me, Sarah? Because, she struggled with the words, because it was easier to agree with them than to admit that we'd become people our father wouldn't recognize. We'd become selfish, entitled, ungrateful. And instead of facing that truth, it was easier to make you the problem. She turned to look at me directly. Dad, you weren't becoming needy or pathetic. You were becoming lonely. And instead of keeping you company, we made you feel ashamed for wanting your children to actually like spending time with you. These were the words I'd needed to hear for a year. Not just an apology, but understanding. Recognition of what had really happened in that kitchen. I was lonely, Sarah. After your mother died, I was so damn lonely I could barely breathe some days. I know, Dad, and we should have been there for you. Real adults would have been there for you. We sat in silence for a while, watching the waves. Dad, can I ask you something else? Go ahead. Do you think you'll ever come back to visit? Not to stay, not to fix our problems, just to visit? I'd been thinking about this all week, watching Sarah interact with my life here, seeing how she respected my choices, my friends, my relationship with Carmen. Maybe, I said, someday, if things continue to change. What would need to change? Your brothers would need to prove they've really grown up. Not just in a crisis, but in daily life. They'd need to show me they can have a relationship with their father that's based on respect, not just need. Sarah nodded. I think they're getting there. Michael calls me every week now, just to check in. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. And David sent me a picture last week of him teaching his son to change a tire. He said he was trying to teach him about self-reliance, about not expecting other people to always fix your problems. That's a start. Dad, what if I told you that all three of us want to pitch in to buy you a plane ticket to come see us? Not to guilt you, not to manipulate you, just to show you who we've become. I looked at her carefully. Are you asking me to come home? No. I'm asking if you'd consider visiting your children who've finally learned how to be worthy of your time. The difference in those words was everything. I'll think about it, I said. The next morning, I drove Sarah to the airport. As we said goodbye, she handed me an envelope. Don't open this until you get home, she said. Inside the envelope was a check for $2,500, enough to cover a round-trip ticket to the States with money left over. But more importantly, there was a note. Dad, this isn't from your children trying to buy your forgiveness. This is from 3 adults who realize they owe their father a proper visit. One where we actually listen to your stories, ask about your life, and treat you like the interesting, accomplished man you are instead of like a problem we need to solve. We've learned to take care of ourselves. Now we want to learn how to take care of each other. When you're ready. If you're ever ready. Love, your kids. I sat in my truck in the airport parking lot and cried for the first time since Martha died. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of something I'd almost given up on. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the children I'd raised were still in there somewhere. And maybe it wasn't too late to get to know them as the adults they'd finally become. That evening, I called Carmen. How did it go? She asked. I said slowly, I think I might have my daughter back. And how does that feel? I watched the sunset from my porch, thinking about Sarah's week here, about the genuine person she'd become, about the possibility that my other children might have grown up too. It feels like maybe the best investment I ever made wasn't the money I spent on their education, I said. Maybe it was the faith I kept that they'd figure out who they were supposed to be. So what happens now? I looked at the plane ticket on my table. Now we'll see if their brothers are ready to meet their father as an equal instead of a bank account. 3 months later, I used that plane ticket. Not because I was ready to forgive everything, and not because I was homesick for my old life. I went back because I was curious to see if the people my children claimed to have become were real. Carmen drove me to the airport. We'd talked about this trip for weeks. "Remember," she said as we said goodbye, "you're not going back as the man who left. You're going as the man you've become." I kissed her and promised to call every day. The plan was simple. 1 week in Ohio, visiting each of my children for 2 days. Not staying in their homes like some burden they had to accommodate, but in a hotel, on my own terms. They could fit into my schedule if they wanted to see me. Michael picked me up at the airport. I almost didn't recognize him either. He'd lost weight, looked older, but there was something solid about him now. Something real. "Dad," he said, and his voice cracked. "Thank you for coming." We drove through familiar streets to a small restaurant downtown. Not some fancy place meant to impress me, just a quiet spot where we could talk. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me get through it without interrupting." I nodded. "When you left, when I found that letter, I was angry at first. I thought you were being dramatic, punishing us for some imagined slight. But then I really thought about what we'd said that day, what I'd said, and I realized something that made me sick to my stomach." He paused, gathering himself. "I realized that I'd become the kind of man who could say he was disgusted by his own father. The man who worked himself to death to give me every advantage in life. And I realized that if I could think that about you, what kind of person was I really?" Michael looked me in the eye. "That night, I gambled away $8,000, everything in my checking account, because I was so disgusted with myself that I wanted to destroy everything I had. And in that moment, sitting in that casino at 3 a.m. with nothing left, I finally understood something." "What?" "I understood that I'd never earned a single thing in my life on my own merit. The Harvard education you paid for, the connections you helped me make, the safety net you provided that let me take risks. I'd built my entire identity on things you gave me. And when that all fell apart, I had no idea who I really was." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small medallion. 6 months sober from gambling, Dad. 6 months of learning to be a man instead of your spoiled son. I sell used cars now, just like you did when I was born. And you know what? I'm good at it. I'm honest, I work hard, and I'm proud of what I do." I looked at this man across from me. My son, but also just Michael, a person I was meeting for the first time. "I'm proud of you too," I said, and meant it. The next 2 days with Michael were a revelation. He didn't ask for money, didn't hint at reconciliation, didn't try to make me feel guilty for leaving. He just wanted to show me who he'd become. We visited his small apartment, met his co-workers, talked about his plans to slowly earn back his children's trust. David was similar. He took me to the public defender's office where he worked, introduced me to his clients, people who reminded me of the families I'd grown up with. Poor people fighting systems they didn't understand, grateful to have someone in their corner. "I make $38,000 a year now, Dad," he told me over dinner. "Jennifer thinks I've lost my mind, but I wake up every morning knowing that what I do matters. Really matters." "It does matter," I said. I wish it had taken me 42 years to figure that out. But it was my last conversation, with all 3 of them together, that really showed me how much had changed. We were sitting in Sarah's small apartment. She'd downsized considerably since losing her hospital job, when Michael asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Dad, are you happy? In Costa Rica, I mean." "Very happy." "Good," Sarah said. "That's what we wanted to know. We're not asking you to come back," David added. "We're not asking you to fix our problems or be our safety net. We just wanted to know that our father found peace." I looked at the 3 of them, my children, but also 3 adults who'd finally learned to stand on their own. "I have found peace," I said. "But I've also found something else." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "I've found out that it's possible to love your children, and like them too. For the first time in years, I actually like the people you've become." We spent the rest of the evening talking, really talking, about their work, my life in Costa Rica, their relationships, my relationship with Carmen. We talked like equals, like adults, like people who chose to be in each other's lives rather than people obligated by blood. On the plane back to Costa Rica, I realized something profound had happened. I hadn't just gotten my children back. I'd gotten myself back too. Because for the first time in my adult life, I was Frank Morrison the person, not Frank Morrison the provider. And my children loved me for who I was, not for what I could give them. It had taken 73 years, but I'd finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued. And you know what? It was worth the wait. So that's my story. The story of how I sold my house, left my old life behind, and discovered that sometimes the best thing you can do for the people you love is to stop letting them take you for granted. Now tell me, if you were in my situation, what would you have done? And let me know. What city are you listening from? Because I'd love to hear from people who understand that respect isn't something you owe your children. It's something they have to earn.